You're listening to the Today's Eden podcast, episode 2. Hey guys, what's up? Today's interview is with Krista Grant, and she is just a fountain of knowledge in all things natural wellness and health. She also founded a natural food store, Farm to Fork. We also talk about her experience as a behavior specialist for a school district. She also shares a lot of great essential oil knowledge. And I am just really excited for you guys to hear this. There's so much that I have learned from just this episode, just talking with her. So let's get to it. Hey, Krista, thank you so much for being on the show. I'm really excited to get to talk with you.
Hey, I'm glad to be here.
Before we dig in, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, a little background?
Sure. I am a mama of 2. I have a little guy, Noah, who is in first grade, and a little girl, Ruthie, who is almost 5. She's my little Spitfire. And I am a natural health and wellness educator with doTERRA International. So I do a lot of education on essential oils, and a stay-at-home mom or a work-at-home mom or that whole awkward space in between.
And I also saw that you went to school for behavior specialist.
Yes, I got my degree in early childhood education and special education. And when I got my first job, I was hired to work in a classroom for children who were a part of this special education program but had pretty intense behavioral needs. So kids with post-traumatic stress, bipolar, things in that realm. And my job was to support them and give them the tools that they needed so that they could be successful in a general education classroom. So oftentimes I had them in my room for 6 to 12 weeks at a time and did a lot of intense training with them. And then we gradually worked them back out into the general education population.
Wow, that's awesome.
It was an incredibly intense job, and I did it for 6 or 7 years. And then when I had my first little guy, I decided to stay home. And it was a perfect time to do that job because it's very emotionally intense and physically demanding.
Yeah.
And so it would be a very hard job to do and then still have anything left to give to my kiddos back home. But it gave me a lot of tools to use as a mom, and just in life too. So it was a fun time of my life.
So what would you say is the most interesting thing that you learned when you were a behavior specialist?
Oh gosh, I got to experience lots of interesting things. I had bones broken. I had to go get tetanus shots. It was very physically demanding.
Wait, you had your bones broken?
I had my jaw broken, actually. I got head-butted. I got head-butted, and I got a fracture in my jaw. So yes, it was very physically demanding. But you know what? What I learned through that very quickly, part of my job was to not just look at the behavior, but to try to figure out where the behavior was coming from. Because if you couldn't figure out, all behavior has a need, it's fulfilling a need. And as I've stepped aside from that job and become a mom and an entrepreneur, I've just realized that all behavior is fulfilling some sort of need. And that if we can figure out what the need is, rather than looking at the behavior, but looking at the why behind that behavior, whether it's attention or they're having a physical need not being met, then you can typically tackle the problem or tackle the behavior and correct that behavior in a much more timely manner than if you're just trying to do behavior modification, which is what most people try to do, is just try to modify the behavior and tell them what not to do rather than figuring out, okay, so you're having a need to get attention. So let's teach you appropriate ways to get attention rather than yelling or kicking or fighting or biting or whatever. Let's talk about proper ways to get attention. And then we can actually correct that behavior, but also meet that deep underlying need too.
Oh, wow. That's deep.
It is, but it was such, I mean, as a 25-year-old, that's a really awesome life lesson to learn, to be able to apply in all relationships, that when, you have a fight with somebody or an argument with somebody, then Ashley, you've probably learned this in marriage and with your own kids, that oftentimes the fight or the argument is not actually about what you're fighting or arguing about. It's oftentimes about something much deeper. And so if we can utilize that in all of our relationships, typically we have stronger relationships moving forward.
Yeah, that would be like awesome going into parenthood to have that sort of skill, because I could just see how like that would just, I mean, in everyday life play out really well.
Absolutely. Now the key is just to remembering that, because when it's your own kids,
yeah, when you're in the moment, yeah.
Exactly.
So I'll probably come back to that and kind of tie that in throughout our conversation, but I wanted to also talk to you about how you got involved with essential oils.
I got involved with essential oils through a customer of ours. We owned a natural food store, which is a whole nother story. But my husband and I own this natural food store called Farm to Fork Foods. It's in Arlington, Texas. And one of our customers brought in some samples for me to try. And she was very persistent and asked me many, many times to come to classes. And I had a preconceived notion of what network marketing companies and multi-level marketing companies looked like. And it wasn't pretty. I did not have a positive view of them. And so I really kind of brushed her off for quite some time. But at that point in my life, I was having some pretty severe abdominal and stomach issues that we had not been able to identify what was going on. And I would just have these pretty intense bouts of pain that would just come on very suddenly, and it would last 24 to 48 hours and would just have me in bed writhing in pain for that entire time. I wouldn't sleep the whole time. And so she dropped off a sample for me. And through this whole time, I never tied the two together. I never thought that I could use the oils to help with this issue. But we found out that I had a gluten allergy, and that's what was causing all the pain. Was I had developed this allergy that was causing me to have these intense stomach reactions. So when we identified that, I was able to eliminate gluten from my diet. But occasionally something would slip in, and most of the time eating at a restaurant or something like that, there'd be cross-contamination. And I would say it was a complete God thing that I was at a restaurant and ate a salad. There was a crouton in it, and I ate the crouton, didn't realize it, and I knew I was going to get pretty darn sick. And so we rushed home, and I used a sample of Digest-Zen, which is a digestive blend of oils. And I used that, and I had just incredibly positive results. And so that just kind of got the ball rolling, and I began learning more and more, and just realized what a gift these oils are to us for our own health and wellness. And then as moms, being able to have those tools at our hand is just a really empowering thing. So I quickly fell in love and never looked back.
So when you're using the oils, and I guess now you're using them daily, I would assume, with your family.
Yes.
So what does a daily routine of using oils for your family look like?
It's something that happens all day long. So the routine definitely varies depending on what season it is and what's going on right now. We just are going back to school, as many, many, many families are around the country. And with that comes lots of yucky germs. So we always start the day with our vitamins. And doTERRA offers both children's vitamins and adult vitamins that are really just the purest vitamins we found. And so that's what we use for our family. But then there's a blend called On Guard, which is an immune boosting blend. And so our whole family takes some form of On Guard every morning. My kids take these little beadlets, which are little BB size um, vegetarian capsules, but they're like the size of a BB. They're really small and just has 1/4 of a drop of On Guard. And so they take one of those every morning just to give their immune system a boost so that they won't catch all those germs until their body kind of gets used to everything that they're exposed to. And then generally we typically do some sort of calming blend just to kind of get out any of those morning jitters before school. Or sometimes, depending on how easily we all woke up, we will use some sort of energizing blend. So peppermint and wild orange is one of our favorites. We'll have that going in the diffuser. And then as we move through the day, I typically will use several different oils to help with concentration and focus as I'm trying to really make the most of my time while the kids are at school. And then in the evening, we typically will do some calming oils as we try to get ready for bed. So that is what we do on a daily basis. But I would say 3 or 4 times a week, we typically have some extra needs that we'll use oils to support us, whether it be a tummy ache or a headache or someone having a little bit of a temper tantrum. And we'll just use oils to support all those things too. So really any type of behavior or any type of physical feeling that isn't quite normal or isn't exactly what we would want to see, we always turn to our oils first to try to support that and see if we can get us a little bit more leveled out.
So it sounds like there's like literally 100 ways to incorporate oils throughout the day.
Yes. People always comment on how good me and my kids smell, and it's just because we're constantly using the oils. But it's really fun to have your son go to school in the morning and him have a stomach ache, and for him to say, "Mom, could you come up at lunch to check and see if I still have a stomach ache so you could put some Digestin on my tummy?" And for a 6-year-old to be able to ask that and to be able to identify the oil that he needs, and for him to have the confidence to, you know what, I can go to school, but I might need a little bit of support in the middle of the day. It's so cool to see our kids get empowered and to have something that they can safely use themselves. So I would love to see our school system get to the point where our kids could use the oils freely, but I think that might be a far-fetched dream.
Yeah.
But at least we as parents can walk into the school and safely use these products.
Right.
And know that we're giving our kids exactly what they need to be able to make it through the day, but we're not adding to their toxicity in their body or anything like that.
Did you first realize, like, man, I've got something good, these are awesome, and then you just, like, how did that make you feel as a mom to have oils in your house?
Yeah, we hadn't been using oils for very long when my son woke up in the middle of the night, and he was just screaming in discomfort, and his ear wasn't feeling good. And I had a book that I was able to utilize that kind of gave me some guidelines of what the ailment looked like and how to approach that with oils. And I grabbed my bottle of Melaleuca and just rubbed it around the back of his ear, put a little bit on a cotton ball and stuck it in his ear, and his little body just melted. Aww. As he got relief from the discomfort that he was experiencing. And so he fell back asleep in 15 or 20 minutes, and I continued that every 2 hours just to make sure that he didn't wake up again with so much discomfort. And the next day he woke up and it was fine. And I have no idea. I don't have a crystal ball, so I have no idea what was going on specifically. We didn't have a physician look at it. Mm-hmm. But I do know that if I didn't have those oils, we probably would have run to some sort of 24-hour clinic, not knowing what to do.
Right.
And to know that I had something in my hands that I could use as a first line of defense to see if it worked before we completely disrupted our entire evening by loading the whole family up and,
Mm-hmm.
Going somewhere. It was such an empowering feeling to know that finally I had something that I could give him. And, there are options as to how we do that. But I know as moms, so often we feel like we have to rely on somebody else. And to be able to know that I have something in my toolbox that I can go to first without having to rely on somebody else, it just makes me so much more confident to be able to parent my kids.
Right. Yeah, I know. And having that confidence is huge because even now, but more so when I became a new mom, when your kids wake up in the middle of the night and they don't feel good, then you're just stressed out because you can't figure out what's wrong, or you can't help them and you just hurt so badly because you want to help them, but you can't. So I can only imagine how that would feel just to have something that you can just walk to your medicine cabinet, grab, and take care of right then and there.
Exactly. Yep.
So I did want to ask you, you mentioned, so you were looking in a book that showed you, I guess, or kind of gave you an idea of the steps to take when you realized his ear was hurting. So how do you educate yourself on those ways to take care of your family and yourself?
There are quite a few different resources for essential oils, particularly, that I have really enjoyed. There's a book called the Modern Essentials Book, and it gives a very practical way to address pretty much A to Z any symptom or ailment that you can imagine. And that is what I used initially. And then recently another book came out called The Essential Life, and we have used that a lot as well. That book has a lot of do-it-yourself recipes and do-it-yourself ideas for things like carpet deodorizer or lotion, body butter, and different kinds of foods and drinks that you can use utilizing the oil. So those two things have been a huge resource. The company that I am partnered with, doTERRA, has a pretty awesome blog as well that is constantly posting research articles and new science that has developed. We are very science oriented, and all of the things that are discussed and all of the things that are mentioned and suggested are research based. And so that's a place where they share a lot of that research as well. And I utilize that all the time to make sure that what I am educating other people on is the newest and the latest research. And then lastly, there's a website called PubMed. And PubMed is just a compilation of research articles for anything in the medical field, including essential oils. And so there are a lot of research articles that are coming up daily. New things are uploaded daily about the oils and how they are used and how they are effective or not effective. And so I try to spend some time every week searching through that database as well to become informed.
Okay, so you caught me at carpet deodorizer. I heard all the rest, but you caught me at carpet deodorizer. So you can use the oils for your body and other things?
Yes, so you can put them on your body, you can put them in your body, you can put them in the air, but we use them for cleaning too. So we the carpet deodorizer is just baking soda mixed with several different drops or several different oils and shake together, and then you just dump it on your carpet, let it sit for a while, and then vacuum it up. And so it's just like the stuff that you buy at the store that is full of synthetic fragrances, but I know that it's a natural thing. It's not going to bother any of us. It's not going to give somebody a headache when they walk into my home, but it makes my home feel nice and fresh. So it's great for people who have pets or who have kids that like to leave their bathing suit in the corner in their room on the carpet for 2 weeks and you don't know and you can't figure out where that mildewy smell is coming from. Not that that happened in our family, but so there are lots of ways to use the oils. We use them for cleaning. It's great to know that, especially when my kids were little, I cleaned all of their toys with an oil called On Guard. And I knew that, even if they stuck that toy in their mouth right after I cleaned it, that they weren't going to be getting any harmful chemicals into their body.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So for those who are listening who are thinking, man, this might be something that I want to check out or learn more about, how can they take steps venturing into a more natural wellness lifestyle? And how could they, I know that another thing for us is how can they convince their husbands that these aren't just voodoo oils,
Yes. I think the first thing is to find somebody who is local to you who can educate you. It can be very daunting, I believe, when you don't really know how or what to use. But there are people all across the country who have dedicated their lives to just teaching people about essential oils. If you don't know somebody, you can definitely contact me. I have a Facebook page that's called Rooted in Wellness. And I am constantly posting tips and tricks and suggestions of how to use the oils. But oftentimes we do Facebook classes. We also do webinars as well, just educating people. So I think the first step is becoming educated, and invite your husband into that. Invite him to be a part of the discussion and to listen. If you go to a class, invite him to come with. Make it a date night. Grab a babysitter, go grab dinner beforehand. And then the second thing is start with what you're comfortable with. I will say that I've never met a single person who has regretted what they've purchased, but they've regretted not purchasing more. Mm-hmm. And so while that's really hard to believe when you're at the very beginning of your journey, most people, that's exactly what they say about 6 months out. So know that you won't regret your purchase ever. But start with what you're comfortable at and just make it a goal to use one oil once a day. And whether it be putting lemon in your water once a day just to help with a gentle detoxification of your body, or decide that you are going to use an oil to help you get a better night of sleep, and just do that at nighttime and get comfortable with that, and then add something else in. And then the other thing, once you have those oils in your home, get some sort of reference book. So whether it be the Modern Essentials book, the Essential Life book, whatever that is, there's also a couple apps on the iPhone, on your smartphone, that you can download. Get some sort of resource material so that when you do have a situation where you have a minor issue come up, rather than turning to what you're normally used to turning to, challenge yourself to turn to oils first and to see if you have something in your oil box that you could use to address that concern, and then go from there. But it's a process. It's not something that happens overnight.
Right. I mean, just like with anything, even if you want to exercise or lose weight, it's kind of getting into the groove. And then once you've done it over, after a certain period of time, then it just becomes like a muscle memory kind of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's So also I wanted to ask you, just out of curiosity, if you could think of any essential oils that could be used for behavioral issues.
There are several.
Did you wish that you had had some for when I was just thinking like, oh my gosh, what if you had started using oils back when, before you got your jaw, broken and,
Yep. Ashley, I just got goosebumps from head to toe when you asked that question, because I've thought about that many times. And not just how I could have used them in the classroom, but how I could have empowered so many parents with them to be able to help. And, there's so many, that's such a loaded question, because I could have used them in the classroom, but so often these poor parents, they live this day in and day out. And I just dealt with it for 8 hours a day, right. But they, and so the emotional support that those families could have received. And, if you have a stressed out parent, then they don't handle behavior issues nearly as gracefully as if you have a calm parent.
Right.
And so not that I don't want you to hear me say that I'm placing any blame on the parents at all. That's not what I'm saying at all. But that if the parents could be supported, they might be able to dig a little deeper into their bag of tricks to try to help their child through their behavioral issues. But I will specifically, when we're talking about the kids, there's a couple oils that are just so helpful. The first one is an essential oil blend called Balance, and it's known as our grounding blend. And it's an oil that really just helps to equalize the behavior. So whether it's very manic behavior or very angry behavior, it really just kind of helps to balance things out. And then there's another oil called Vetiver. And Vetiver is known, it's actually been researched to really help and provide support to children with attention needs. And so this particular oil can really help kids who are just having a hard time focusing and staying on task, which then can lend itself to frustration, which can lend itself to some pretty intense behaviors.
Right.
So those two oils in particular, I think I would have utilized a lot when I was in the classroom.
Man, I could just think of how that could affect a general classroom. Just like, if we could use those or send our kids with them at school.
Every single one of my kids' teachers, every year, they get a diffuser and they get a bottle of On Guard at the beginning of the year. And if they feel comfortable, I never tell them. I always do it with the disclaimer that if they want to bring it home, they can bring it home. But if they'd like to diffuse in the classroom, that it would be my pleasure to keep their stock filled. And I just explained to them how On Guard can help eliminate junk that's in the air to try to help keep everybody healthy. And those teachers get so excited to think that they have a tool that not can just keep their kids there, but can keep them healthy too and keep them from getting all the gunk that those kids bring into the classroom.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No. It's just nice to see how it can be utilized in so many different ways, that we can use it for immune boosting and to keep everybody well and to increase attendance, which in the public school system, increased attendance means more money for the school.
Right.
So everybody is always aiming to have the kids there as much as possible. And then we can use it for, for calming or to be uplifting. There's several oils that are excellent to help with focus and concentration. Okay. So there's so many different ways that teachers can use them in the classrooms if they're allowed to do so.
So if any school administrators are listening, I don't see why you wouldn't want that in your school.
Amen. I have a friend actually whose little girl's in kindergarten and is really struggling with the transition. And so she bought her a diffuser necklace, and it's a little necklace that's in the shape of an egg, and it has a lava bead inside. And so the parent just puts a couple drops of an oil called Citrus Bliss, which is a very uplifting, happy oil. It smells kind of like a creamsicle. And she sends her to school with that. And the school counselor called her and said, when you dropped your daughter off, she was having a really hard time. And she lifted that egg up to her nose and took some deep breaths on her own. And I could feel her body melt as she began to just calm down.
Oh my gosh.
And it was so cool to hear that story and to know that, that we have tools to be able to help our kids get through the day and get through these hard transitions.
Yeah, and to get a message of reassurance, because when you leave your kids, you're like wondering all the what ifs, and to get that message, I'm sure she was just like, oh my gosh.
Yep, that mom then turned around and bought diffuser necklaces for the teacher.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. So in doTERRA, you are a blue diamond, so which is like the top of the top, so you know what you're talking about. Through this journey, how have you evolved and grown personally and just like in your education of oils?
I will say that I have never done something in a professional, like from a professional perspective, that has stretched me more than doTERRA has. It's unique because I am a business owner. I get to decide how and when I work. But at the same time, so much of my job relies on relationships and how I relate to other people. And I have just become very keenly aware that everything boils down to relationships with other people. And if there aren't relationships with other people, you can't sell anything. You can't have longevity in your business. You have to work 3 times as hard if you don't have relationships. But then I've also started to realize my own personal blocks that are associated with fear. What are people going to think of me if I do X, Y, and Z? Or how are people going to perceive me? And are people going to think this is weird? And I always thought that I was a very confident person. But as I got further into this business, I just realized how deeply rooted fear is in all of us. And whether you realize it or not, we all have so many different fears of how we are perceived and how we move forward. And to be honest, I think that many people, including myself, I've had to work through this, have a fear of making money. And most people would laugh at you in your face if you said that they had a fear of making money. But then, when given the opportunity to work really hard to really help provide an awesome future for your family, they start to stumble and they start to make really weird choices. And I think that we all have just some deeply rooted blocks that keep us from moving forward. So I've really had to work through a lot of those myself as I've worked through this business.
What has your most memorable, like, entrepreneurial career moment been so far?
Oh, goodness. Um, honestly, I mentioned that my husband and I had owned this natural food store. And that was something that kind of evolved through a family need. And it just evolved into this. We always called it a monster because we had no idea it was going to become what it became. And through that, I became more involved with doTERRA. So at one point in our lives, my husband was running his family business. And then I was running my doTERRA business. And then we were both doing Farm to Fork together. And then we had 2 kids. And I was technically a stay-at-home mom. I didn't have a nanny, and my kids weren't in school full time or anything. So we had our plates very full.
Yeah.
And my husband really tried to encourage me to release this Farm to Fork, the natural food store. And I was so hesitant because it was just my baby. I mean, we built it from the ground up, and it was something that I was very proud of. But we finally decided to sell it. And that in itself was a leap of faith because it was still a very new business in terms of how businesses are evaluated and priced and assessed.
Right.
And we had no idea if we'd even be able to sell it. And when we finally found a family who wanted to buy it from us and wanted to grow it and wanted to continue the vision, was just a really cool experience for us, to know that my dream was also someone else's dream and that we had built it to a point that was worthy of being bought. And I mean, we by no means got rich off of it, but that was just a very prideful moment to know that we had created something that not only was beneficial to other people, but that someone else saw value in.
How did Farm to Fork come to life?
Farm to Fork came to life because I was a new mom to my second little kiddo, to Ruthie Grace, and she was an infant. So I had a almost 2-year-old and a newborn at home. And I started to get kind of sick and was really focusing on eating healthier foods and trying to make sure that what was going in my body was the best that I could get. But I found myself driving to all these farms because what you buy in the grocery stores here in Texas is typically not the best that you can buy. And we don't have very good farmers markets. So there was not one place that I could go to get everything. So I found a farm that was willing to deliver to my house with a minimum order. So I just kind of became the hub for that, and posted on Facebook, good old social media, and said, hey, I'm going to be putting in an order for grass-fed beef. If anybody would like to participate, let me know. And the response was overwhelming. And then all of those people said, well, can we find pastured chicken too? So I went to work and I found a farm that we felt comfortable with who'd be willing to deliver. And then we found a salmon supplier from Alaska. And we had to have 1,000-pound minimum order in order to get this salmon delivered down to us. And if you don't know what 1,000 pounds of
Yeah,
salmon
I
looks
can't
like,
even.
it's a lot of salmon. And so at that point, we were providing food for 80 to 100 families,
Oh my
and these
gosh.
people were just picking up out of my garage. So my neighbors were like, "What is going on?"
Right.
And so my husband and I just realized that we needed to think a little bit bigger, or we needed to stop, because it was too crazy to keep doing at our house. And that's when Farm to Fork was born. So we were able to use a little building that was actually on the front of his family's company's property. And it just evolved. It continued to be order based initially. And then we, over time, just turned into a straight retail store. And we had, regular retail hours, Monday through Saturday. And it just has evolved since then.
Are you guys still involved with Farm to Fork at all anymore? Or?
We are still customers, but we are not involved in any of the management or any of the day-to-day stuff. But I will say that if you are in the Metroplex, it is an awesome, awesome place to get natural foods. They have everything from milk to dairy to bison and lamb and chicken and beef, 2 different types of beef. And then lots of other kind of grocery type items. They also do deliveries to quite a few different areas around the Metroplex. So their website is www.farmtoforkfoods.com, and you can just hop on there and get information. I get absolutely no benefit from sending people there, but it's my pride and joy, and believe in their mission with all my heart. So I would love to see people go and stop by there.
Of course. So how surreal is it for you to go there now as a customer versus not too long ago you were on the other side of the counter?
Yeah. It's weird, but at the same time, every time I walk out, I say, I'm so glad that's not my issue anymore.
Oh, yeah.
But it's so sweet to walk in, and, employees come and go. And so it's fun to get to meet the new employees and say goodbye to employees that are moving on to something else. And it's neat to see things continue to grow and see them implement new programs, and to see them going, start to open the delivery business as well. It's just been neat. It's just been very, I kind of feel like a proud mama or a proud grandma watching, watching things just become more and more of, reaching its potential.
Right.
And it has such potential. And it's so neat to get to see our community keep their business within the community too, because that's one of the things that they focus on, is sourcing from people who are right here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And so keeping our money local is also a really cool thing to watch happen.
That's awesome. When you get to pass something on you love to somebody else who loves it just as much.
Exactly.
So I wanted to ask you, what are some things that as a woman that you had wished you had known or been made aware of in regards to your health and wellness when you were younger that you know now?
And I don't know if it does apply to health and wellness. I wish that someone would have told me to enjoy life more, and to
Yes.
not take it as seriously. And,
Yeah.
when I see people who are young and, just married and don't have kids yet, and I see them just busting their heinies in their job, which I think there's merit to, because I think that when you work really, really hard prior to kids, and if you are responsible with your money, it allows you to maybe not be quite as stressed when you have children. But at the same time, my husband and I look at each other so many times. We're like, why didn't we do this before we had kids? Why didn't we travel more? Why didn't we see more of the world? Why didn't we have more date nights? And, I just wish that I would have just stopped and enjoyed things more, and realized that just really lived in the moment. And then from a health and wellness perspective, which I do think enjoying life lends itself to better wellness. But I just wish that I would have realized that the food that I was eating then was not the food that I was eating when I was 5. And I think so many times we say, well, I grew up eating X, Y, and Z, and I'm fine.
Right.
But people don't realize that the food system And shoot, the medical system has changed drastically over the last 30 years. And, you look at vaccinations, and I know we're not going there. I'm not going to tell you where I stand in vaccinations, but when I was vaccinated, I believe I got like 7 or 8 vaccines, period. And I was fully vaccinated. And now if you fully vaccinate a child, they're getting somewhere in the range of like 30 to 40 or something. And don't quote me on that number.
Yeah.
But I know it's at least 5 times as many vaccinations as I received when I was a kid. And so to say, well, I'm vaccinated, so I should vaccinate my kids, or, well, I ate hot dogs when I was 5, so let me just feed my kid Oscar Mayer. All that has changed. And so if you want to do that, that's fine. That is your prerogative, and you can do all of those things, but make sure you know what you're doing, and don't just fall back on the excuse of, well, this is the way it's always been done, so this is the way I'm going to move forward.
Yeah. And I've seen how hot dogs are made, and I can't. Like, if you've seen there
are some good hot dogs out there. Yeah. Farm to Fork sells a bison hot dog that is very clean.
That doesn't have that pink paste in it, right?
It does not have the pink paste. So there are definitely, there's ways that we can still get that good comfort food. But it took me until I had children to realize that how profoundly different the world we live in is than how it was when I was growing up. And it's going to continue to do that. And so I wish that I could have told my college self to not trust everything that's presented to you at face value, and just to dig a little bit deeper. And that doesn't mean to not trust the people that you love and respect, but just to take responsibility for the information that you have and that you're relying on.
Yeah, and I think that's also a danger with social media in general, because I see things just get posted, and then everybody just, because it's posted and it looks official, so everybody just believes it.
Yep. Or they share the article because they agree with the title of the article, but they don't actually read the article, and they have no idea what the article actually said. Yeah. Yep. I won't go on that soapbox.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, I had just did a video recently, and I was reading up on food, and the study I had read said that basically food in the 1950s was like way more better than what we're doing right now. And if we would have to eat 5 times the food to get the nutritional value that people were getting in the 50s.
Wow.
So that's a whole lot of food.
That's a whole lot of food. And most likely people aren't going to be eating real food. Right. They're just going to go and
like potato chips
multiply.
And stuff.
Yes, exactly. So, which is probably what's leading to our obesity epidemic.
Oh yeah, that's another topic. We have so many other.
We're going to have about 5 more podcasts, Ashley.
I think so. So I did know that when you're saying that you were sick, and just knowing you and stuff, I knew that you had found out you had Lyme disease. So how did you realize? Because I know having an autoimmune disease myself, like that was torture. Feeling a certain way, and then going like so long not knowing. So how was your journey with Lyme disease?
I consider myself incredibly lucky. We think that I was infected with Lyme prior to having kids, and we just didn't know. Right. I got some sort of bite that turned into a pretty nasty rash, and we ended up in the emergency room, and they told me I had been bitten by a brown recluse spider. And, you go to the doctor, and that's what they tell you, and so you trust them.
Right.
But that's the only thing that we can link it back to. But after I had my daughter, I started having all these stomach issues. We found out I'd had this gluten allergy, and then I started seeing a naturopathic doctor who was in Fort Worth, and we began running different tests, and first found out that I had a pretty major candida overgrowth. And so we tackled that and got rid of that. And then we found out that I had a parasite. And so we tackled that and got rid of that. And my symptoms just kept persisting. And she has a machine that basically reads different energy levels, which sounds really weird and voodoo, and I don't really understand it, but it it indicated that there was Lyme present in my body. And so she was not one to rely solely on this machine, but she just used that machine as somewhat of a diagnostic tool. And then she would explore things a little bit further. And so I had blood testing done, and sure enough, it discovered that I had both dormant and active Lyme in my body, which indicates that not only did I have Lyme that was very active, but that it showed that I had Lyme for quite some time. The way the test is run, they can tell whether it's a new exposure or an old exposure. So at that time, I was diagnosed with chronic Lyme, and through that, I saw that particular doctor for a while, and then realized that we were kind of ending her understanding and ability to deal with that. And so we moved on, and I found another doctor up in Frisco who, in my opinion, has just saved my life. He works with he does some consultation stuff with a clinic in Arizona. And I have driven up to Frisco, which is about an hour drive for me one way. And I've made that drive once a week, every single week since last fall. And just recently, I got lowered down to only come in twice a month because my body has just healed so much,
Yay.
which was so exciting. I know. I cried tears of joy. And actually just got to start working out again, which is really exciting because I haven't gotten to do that for 2 years. I haven't been physically strong enough to do that. So, I know people who once Lyme goes chronic, it never, they deal with it for the rest of their life. And many people would say that there's no such thing as a cure for Lyme. And the one thing that I will say that I was gifted with was getting to make the choice every single day that this was something I would beat. And it wasn't a matter of if, but a matter of when. And that was my mindset every morning. And that's the mindset that I went to bed with every single night. And no matter how bad I felt or how discouraged I was because of all the things that I couldn't do, I knew that I got to make the choice, whether I was going to just give in to the disease and let it rule my life, or if I was going to conquer it. And I knew that that's what I wanted my story to be. And so I feel like I'm living that right now. I'm conquering it. And I'm so grateful that the Lord gave me that mindset from the very beginning, because I know that was not something of myself.
Right. Yeah, that's so powerful, because I know so many people just are defeated because they feel like they have nowhere else to go. They've hit the ceiling and they don't, whether it's they don't have somebody to come in and say like, hey, I heard of this place, or, your thing sounds similar to what, my doctor helped me with, or then there's just so many people that are just defeated, that have nowhere else to go.
I think that one thing, and there were times, don't get me wrong, there were times that I was very frustrated. Finding a doctor to help with Lyme is very challenging. There's actually there's something called a Lyme literate medical doctor, and because the way Lyme is, it's a very political disease, which is bizarre that any medical issue would be considered political, but it is. And doctors don't advertise that they are an LLMD. And so to find an LLMD, you actually have to go through a Lyme Disease Association who has a list that they can then send to you.
Oh my gosh.
So it's very challenging to find a doctor.
Could they make it any harder?
Exactly. But it's out of protection for these doctors, so they won't, so that the system won't come after them. But unfortunately, in the DFW area, there's only one LLMD, and their primary focus is antibiotics, which was a route that I was willing to take if I got desperate,
right.
But I always felt deep down in my gut that there was other modalities that I could use to tackle it, and that's what we did. So I just continued to ask questions and talk to people, and I got lucky and met someone who referred me to this doctor, and it took about 2 months for me to agree to make the drive up there. And then it took a lot of praying to decide that I was going to commit to a once a week appointment for 6 months. And that's what I told him. I said, you got 6 months to help me out. And if you don't, then we're going to start, we're going to go somewhere else.
Right.
But in 6 months, I had made progress, and I knew that I was on the right track and just kept with it.
Yeah, because when you're at that point of visit after visit after visit, you're like, okay, it's your patience and your your desire to keep going forward gets harder and harder to pursue.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yep. So you really have to take every small positive step forward as a personal victory. And, I celebrated every step forward. Every supplement that I got to stop taking, that was exciting for me because it meant that my body no longer needed that. And then just honoring where you are, and not getting discouraged of where you are. And it's a very fine line. And it was a line that sometimes I fell to the wrong side of. Mm-hmm. But I had a great support system around me as well. Which I'm grateful for. But I will say that it's, if anybody's listening who is dealing with a chronic illness, and you didn't ask me this, so I hope I can take the liberty to just say it.
No,
but,
yeah, go.
2 things that the number one, don't own the disease and don't own the illness. And again, I believe that this was something that the Lord pointed out to me very early on, but I kept hearing people say, my Lyme disease. And to me, that was them taking ownership as if that was a part of their identity. And I didn't want that to become a part of my identity. I wanted that to be something that I was going through, that was a chapter of my life, but it was not who I was. I'm not Krista, the person with Lyme disease. I am Krista, who is experiencing this season that happens to include Lyme. Mm. And that was something that I think really helped me get through that. And the other thing that I would say to someone, and this is for Lyme or for any type of chronic illness, and Ashley, this too, that don't take I don't know as an answer, and don't take those bogus diagnosis like IBS. And right. Most people know that IBS is basically just saying you have something going on
and we don't know what it is.
We don't know what it is. Exactly. Don't take those and believe that that's the final answer. Keep searching and be your own advocate and try new things. If you would have told the 25-year-old Krista, that I was going to a naturopathic doctor or I was going to a chiropractor to help me get through these things, I would have laughed in your face. But, we just kept trying new things and kept trying new people to see what they could offer. And we found something that worked.
Right. I think that's a habit for all of us because I know that when I was going through my process with Hashimoto's, that when I didn't know anywhere else to go but to the doctor. And it took a lot of bravery, out of my comfort zone for me to be like, no, this is not okay. Because I would get sent home still having the same questions, still feeling the same way, no answers, just really confused. And so then I think it took something other than myself to be able to, be like, no, something's not right, and to actually follow through with that and, keep pushing through to find out what the real problem was.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I'm super thankful that I knew you, because the doctor that you're talking about in Fort Worth, that is actually how I found wellness
awesome.
And stuff. And so, yeah, I was totally grateful for that. I was pretty much at the end of my patience of dealing with stuff. And then I can remember the first time that I went there, and I had to take a blood test. And at first I was not happy about it because I had already been poked and prodded. I had gotten CAT scans, x-rays, everything. And everybody was telling me, literally my last doctor said, I don't know, but if you feel worse, just give me a call. And so, and yeah.
So, I wouldn't be here if I didn't already feel worse.
And that was already after the CAT scan, the x-ray, and I also had an endoscopy. And so,
oh my gosh.
Yeah. So, and then being able to walk into that place and literally after she got my blood results, the first like 10 minutes I was there was able to say like, this is what you have, here's the steps, and just like tears and the flood of relief of like, oh my gosh, like
the hope that gives you.
Yeah, that it wasn't over, that I wasn't gonna deal, like you said, be defined by something that can really like mind block you for the rest of your life.
Absolutely. And Ashley, I think that this whole concept ties into essential oils. It ties into more natural ways of eating too, because if you're used to just popping pills for everything, it can be very daunting to move to something that's a little bit more natural.
Right.
And you can be afraid of how your parents will take it, or how your spouse will take it, or just your friends, your community. And typically all it takes is that one decision, one choice to say, yes, I'll try it.
Right.
And yes, I will make the decision to move from grocery store ground beef to grass-fed beef that I buy from a farmer. That one choice.
Right.
And then it becomes more comfortable. And then that next choice is a little bit easier. And then the next choice is even easier. And before you know it, you've completely changed your lifestyle, and your health and your wellness looks completely different. And it was just because of one choice.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that we're used to somebody telling us what to do. So it's kind of just us being able to say, okay, like I want to feel better. I want to do X, Y, Z. So I'm actually going to have to be responsible and do the work to feel X, Y, Z.
And nobody cares about you as much as you. So if you're not going to give yourself the time and the respect and the energy, how can you expect someone else to give you the time, the respect, and the energy?
Right. Wow. That's truth bomb.
Yeah. Mic drop. Right?
Yeah. So that's awesome. You have like some great stories, and let's do like the rapid fire questions, and then So what is your one guilty pleasure?
Cheese. Any form of cheese, queso, or any form of cheese.
I can't even eat cheese, so I don't want to talk about that.
Oh gosh, I probably should be dairy free, but because they often say like whatever you crave the most is probably something that your body doesn't really need, like stuff that you crave over time.
I've never heard that.
I just recently learned that, and I do have a slight dairy intolerance, but because I can't eat any gluten, I'm like, I get to have that one thing.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So what is the most influential book that you have read?
I would say there's a book that's called The One Thing, and it is by Keller Williams, of Keller Williams Real Estate. And is it Keller Williams?
I think it's Gary Keller.
That's right. Keller Williams. There's a Keller and there's a Williams. Yes.
Right, yeah.
But The One Thing is basically just about how you can have a large, you can have a lot of skill sets. But if you try to do all of those things, and if you have lots of focuses, then you will never be great at one thing. And if you can narrow in your focus to one thing, then that one thing allows you to really excel and really succeed. And so that was something, that book was given to us by our realtor, actually, when we bought the house that we're in now. And it was one of the things that led us to decide to sell Farm to Fork, and for me just to focus on doing doTERRA, because I realized that I was so spread thin that I couldn't really do one thing well.
Yeah, I think that's good that we practice saying no more often, that we're not afraid to do that.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. If you could have lunch with one famous person, who would it be?
You're going to laugh at this. I want to eat lunch with O.J. Simpson because I want to know if he did it. Oh,
man. Yeah, I could totally see that. Like the other day you posted what you wanted to be where the hurricanes were.
Yes,
You're crazy. You're crazy.
I have the most random thoughts. I don't want to go on vacation with O.J. Simpson or anything like that. I just want to hear his story. I want to really know what that's been. And that's like the least deep answer I could give you, but that's the first thing that comes to mind. So there you go.
Oh my gosh. If you could go back to 25-year-old Krista and tell her one thing, what would you say and why?
I think that we kind of touched on that, but I would say quit taking life so seriously and have fun, because there's going to be times in life that you have obligations and that you have responsibilities that are far bigger than your own personal desires. Mm-hmm. And so when you have time to really kind of be selfish, to enjoy that. And then also to take care of your body, because I have no doubt that the way I treated my body when I was growing up, especially in college in those young adult years, the way I treated my body definitely did not bode well for how I handled further health stresses. So I had to make such significant changes when I started to struggle with my health.
Yeah, I think that's huge. I wish I would have known that ahead of, well, yeah. So where can we find the Facebook group at that you mentioned again?
Yes, it's just Rooted in Wellness. And it is a closed page, so you have to ask to join it. But aside from that, it's a closed group, excuse me. But we are going to be having a public page start here pretty soon, and we're working on a website too. So,
awesome.
Yeah. So we Rooted in Wellness is the best place to find us on Facebook, and then as new things pop up, you will be notified through that group.
That sounds good. Thank you so much for sharing all your knowledge and your stories. I hope that
Thank
it helps
you for inviting
somebody.
me.
Yeah.
Yes, it was an honor.
Thanks for listening. For today's show notes for this episode, go to todayseden.com/podcast, TODAYSEDEN.com. Also, make sure to check out the blog. I write about all sorts of stuff on there, life stories, health, wellness, you name it. So make sure you check that out. Until next time, do what they think you can't do.